Welcome to my OUTERPLANE patch review, and this patch is going to be a big one because we have two new units, the Vlada and the Demiurge Vlada, new Demiurge unit, which is hype as always. So let's just get straight into the first unit we have here, Vlada, Fire Striker, as expected. And skill 1, attacks an enemy, has 70% chance to inflict burn for 2 turns. It ignores resilience, that's pretty big. That means you can focus on attack. Seems like a PV unit so far, focused on burns. Skill 2, attacks all enemies, detonates all burned stacks, and increases damage by 50% of the detonation of the burns. Wow, that's pretty big. Increases damage dealt to earth targets by additional 20%. She's feeling like the new F2P green gear king right now. Like, wow. And this also has a burst on it, so first burst increases damage and earth detonation by 30%. That's pretty big already. Increase burn duration by 2 turns when detonating. It's so big. This is so massive, actually. Reduces Apocalypse Now cooldown by 2 turns, which is her ult. The second one is going to increase her detonation damage by so much. When you add like everything combined, 30% here, 20% here, 50% here, it's actually going to do so much damage. It's unbelievable. And finally, her skill 3, so attacks all enemies, inflicts burn for 2 turns on all the targets, 2 burns for 2 turns, ignores resilience, and resets cooldown when an enemy is defeated. 2 turn burns for two times. That's actually pretty good. Especially, like, if you have do skill 3 into skill 2, you have 2 turn burns, and then you burst this, and it'll be 2 4-turn burns. So detonate 50% extra damage. So that'll be like 2 6-turn burns. So each burn is... So that'll be like 12 ticks of burns in total. That's going to be so much damage. It's insane. Seems like you want to stack attack on this unit. And it's going to be like a PvE god against green dungeons that don't have burn immunity. It's going to be so insane. Chain and unique passive. Chain starter. After attacking, has a 100% chance to inflict burn on all enemies for 2 turns. Really good chain starter for PvE. It's unfortunately you need to build effectiveness to land this consistently because it doesn't ignore resilience, it seems. Dual attack, after attacking, has a 70% chance to inflict burn for 2 turns. It's alright. 70% chance, though. And her Transcendence is crit damage. Actually not going to be that good. Like, she doesn't even use crit damage, because you probably want to build a, like, just attack for the maximum burn damage possible. So, and crit damage isn't even that great of a Transcendence anyway, because attack is just way better. And her exclusive equipment is, when using Pass of Glory, increases duration of burn by 1 turn. So that's her skill 2 detonation ability. It's just gonna increase her damage output even more, even though the damage this is gonna output is already gonna be insane. Like, if you use it with a skill 2 burst, it's going to increase burn duration by 3 turns before detonating, which is going to be like absolute bonkers. So overall first impressions of Vlada is she's just going to be insane in all green content that's not immune to burn, because she just does so much burn, increases so many stacks of burns, and then detonates with 50% extra damage on the burns, and does 50% extra damage to earth units. Okay, now we can move on to the second new unit, which is the new Demiurge unit, which is very hype. Let's see what she is. Demiurge Vlada, Dark Ranger. So she's going to be 154 base speed. Vanguard. Okay, onto the skills. Skill 1. Attacks an enemy, has a 40% chance to increase the ultimate skill cooldowns of the target by 1 turn. Increases damage dealt to bosses. 40% chance. I mean, ultimate skill cooldown increase is pretty decent against bosses. Okay. Burst 50. This is the cheapest burst we've seen so far, I'm pretty sure. Before, the cheapest was 60, but now it's 50, 75, 100. Okay, that's new. Inflicts reduced defense for 2 turns. She's looking like a PV unit so far. 60% chance to increase cooldown, but only costs 75, remember? Like, the cheapest before was 60. So 100% chance to increase cooldown of ultimate by 1 turn with burst 2. And burst 3 is target all enemies and increase damage dealt. That's really good, because 100 is really low cost. Remember, like, D Stellar, like burst 1 for D Stellar is like 120, I believe. So it's cheaper than Burst 3 for this unit. It's cheaper than D-Stellar Burst 1. And it has a 100% chance to increase all ultimate school cooldowns for 1 turn. The thing is, you can never start with 100 AP, so... I don't know. We'll have to see. Skill 2, Crush Gear. Seems like a passive. So when the caster removes buffs from an enemy, it grants Destroyer's Punishment for 2 turns. When the caster attacks all enemies, use Heavy Metal Raptor. Ooh. Okay, so... Destroyer's Punishment increases damage dealt to the enemy and enhances the effect of Heavy Metal Raptor. Okay. So that's the passive buff you get after this unit removes a buff. Okay. And additional effects granted when using Heavy Metal Raptor. Reduces Destruction Blade by 1 turn, so that's your ultimate. Right after using Heavy Metal Raptor, does not trigger an enemy's counter attack, revenge, or agile response. Ooh, and Heavy Metal Raptor itself just attacks all enemies. That's all it does. And does increase damage to bosses. Okay. So I'm assuming she's going to have a strip skill. And since that attacks all enemies, and then it's going to trigger because of this line. When the cast attacks all enemies, use Heavy Metal Raptor. And she's going to get the buff at the same time. So when she uses Heavy Metal Raptor, it's going to not trigger a counter attack or agile response. And it's going to reduce the cooldown of her ultimate by 1 turn. Okay, interesting. And her skill 3, Destruction Blade, has a 100% chance to remove all buffs from all enemies. This is the strongest strip skill we have right now. Wow. And attacks all enemies. After attacking, has a 100% chance to inflict unhealable on all enemies for 2 turns. Okay, so I get it. So she's going to use skill 3 to strip all buffs from everyone. Then she's going to inflict unhealable. And D-Stellar and the like won't be able to counter attack at all because after she uses the skill, she's going to trigger her passive. When the caster removes a buff from the enemy, it grants Destroyer's Punishment. And when the caster attacks all enemies, she's going to use her Heavy Metal Raptor. And the Heavy Metal Raptor is enhanced because she just got the passive buff from this, which, right after using, does not trigger enemy counterattack, revenge, or agile response. So D-Stellar won't be able to counter. Like, nobody will be able to counter after she uses this on turn 1. Okay, and looking at the chain passive and unique passive. Okay. Always attack with elemental advantage. Companion, that's pretty bad, generic, okay. Dual attack effect has a 40% chance to increase ultimate skill cooldown of the target by 1 turn. Wow. I mean, it's alright, I guess. Like, 40% is really low. If it was 100%, it would be really good. But since it's only 40%, meh, whatever. Transcendence. So, ally team attack 10%. One of the best Transcendences you can have. And I see another 10% here, so it's 20% overall. That's insane. Okay, 20% attack boost. Reduces efficiency of priority increase effects of the enemy by 20%. Not even everyone, just the enemy. So usually in games when they have a character with this effect, reduces priority increase effects, usually affects everybody, including yourself. But this one only affects the enemy, so it's looking pretty insane right now. 5-star Transcendence. Plus 30% for the enemy, so 50% enemy overall. This is going to completely destroy the Astes because she won't be able to boost to 100% if this is on the field. And plus 50 AP at the start. Wow. She can literally use Burst 1 immediately. So Burst 1 was Inflict Reduced Defense. Okay, it's looking pretty insane right now. But she's going to have 50 and the Ranger bonus gives another 20 during your turn. So she's going to have 70 in turn 1. Wow. 6-star Transcendence, another 10% attack, which is really good. And increases the speed of the caster for 1 turn. Hey, so they put a really good buff on the 6-star Transcendence again. But the thing is, I don't think this matters as much as people think it will be. Like of course it's going to be insane. Like, it's still going to be really, really good. But it's not going to be like that insane because she doesn't really do that much turn 1. So the difference between having this and not having this is outspeeding Dahlia's and Alice's. That's it, right? So even if you outspeed a Dahlia, what are you going to do? You're just going to strip and unhealable, right? And so what? Who cares? they're just gonna freeze you anyway. So it doesn't really matter, even if you outspeed or don't outspeed a Dahlia. So that's why it doesn't really matter that much, but it's still really good for cases like you want to outspeed their Ranger, for example. But yeah. And finally, exclusive equipment. Increases all attack damage, proportional to target's max health. So this is looking more like a PvE exclusive equipment, probably not 100% requirement for PvP. But for PvP, you always want everything you can get, so yeah. But it's just not like essential for PvP, but for PvE, it's definitely going to help a lot. So overall, what do I think about Vlada? So at 6-star, Vlada is definitely going to be the #1 best strip in the game. She strips everything. She's the fastest unit in the game. She doesn't trigger counter attacks from stuff like D-Stella. She doesn't counter agile like stuff from TO. So yeah, just zero problems. Just strip and done. And inflicts unhealable as a bonus. Now, a 5-star, Vlada is still extremely good, even though she's not the fastest unit in the game anymore, but she gets outsped by stuff like Dahlias and Alices. So in that case, it might be a 50-50 on who's the best stripper, but with Dahlia against Vlada, yeah. Because if you know that the enemy has like a really strong D-Stella that has like really high attacks, just gonna one-shot all your squishy units with a counter, then you're gonna want to bring Vlada, right? Because Vlada can't be countered because of a skill 3 into skill 2 passive. But if they don't have anything problematic like that, or they don't have like a TO, you can just go Dahlia and she'll do the same job, but she'll be much faster, so she can outspeed the entire opponent team without any problem. Main reason is because she has the 50% prior reduction of the enemy, prior increase reduction, so it just completely counters stuff like Charlotte, counters stuff like Notia, and completely destroys units like Diaste, because Diaste won't be able to get the guaranteed turn anymore if you have a 5-star Vlada. Was this how it would go? It would be like, let's say the Diaste is on like 70% priority right now, yeah? And then you kill the Diaste, she goes down to 35% because of the PvP revive mechanics, where you only revive with 50% of your priority. So she'll revive with 35%, right? And her passive, when she dies, she gets pushed by 80%. So normally that would push her above 100%, and she'll be able to take the next turn immediately. But if you have 5-star Vlada, reducing that bonus by 50%, she'll only push herself by 40%. So she'll only be on 75% priority afterwards. So she won't be able to get the guaranteed turn anymore. So that's why Vlada is also so good, still a 5-star, because she just completely gets rid of one of the best PvP units right now, Demiurge. And 4-star Vlada, she doesn't have the 50% priority decrease anymore. She only has 20%. So it's not going to be very effective against units like Diaste anymore. It won't be able to stop like Charlotte's from pushing that much, so it's not really that great compared to 5-star. It still does have the team ally attack plus 10% Transcendence, which is a really big damage increase, but I still believe that 5-star is the best value Transcendence for Vlada. Yeah. That's it from me today. I'll probably see you again tomorrow after I've actually pulled both units and tested them in the actual game, so I can give you like an actual evaluation of real performance. See you on the next one.